I'm Craig, Partnerships Manager at Fnatic, so I have a bit of a hybrid role where I'm involved in a lot of different things. So oversee strategically all of our business development and commercial operations, but also do a bit of day-to-day account management with some of our key partners, but also delve into lifestyle as well, hence why I'm on the panel today. So great to meet you all.
Cool. Patrick Mahoney from We Are Nations. We do merchandise and apparel for a lot of teams and leagues and tournaments, but also spent most of my career in music merchandising, which we still do as a separate company, and clients include Weezer, Panic! At the Disco, Fall Out Boy, and that's why I suspect that I'm here.
Hi everybody, I'm Roth. I'm from Twitch. I'm the Director of Event Sales and Sponsorships. My role there is to bring brands together with esports opportunities and help them speak to the audience in the most authentic way possible.
Erik Anderson, I run Esports for FaZe Clan. So I'm in charge of all the competitive side of FaZe Clan's kind of broad group of influencers, content creators, and pros. My background's actually in the music industry, so Patrick and I have a little bit of crossover there, and just excited to talk to you about kind of what we do and what's going on in the space.
I think we've seen over, especially over the last year, 2 years, there's been a really big crossover between not just mainstream, but specifically celebrities and hip hop artists and sportsmen that's kind of coming into the esports space. So we're just going to talk about some of those more notable examples. I think it'd be a really good place to start to talk about perhaps the watershed moment that opened a lot of opportunities for these big hip-hop artists to come into esports, which is when Ninja and Drake played Fortnite together on Twitch. And I think if Ross, you kind of want to discuss what that kind of did for the space.
Yeah, absolutely. So as the story goes, Drake slid into Ninja's DMs. It wasn't the other way around, but who knows really what happened there. But essentially, they streamed together and they played Fortnite. And it was a record-breaking stream. It was over 600,000 concurrent viewers. And what it did was it woke up Drake's audience to this other passion point that he had, which was gaming. So a lot of the time, you know, we pigeonhole people, we pigeonhole celebrities into, okay, he's a hip-hop artist, he's a sports fan, but actually they have a huge amount of other interests outside of that. And so on this stream, you know, yes, they played Fortnite, you know, they had a great time together, there was clearly chemistry. You also found out that Drake loved pineapple on pizza. And it was just those kind of moments where it really humanized Drake to the audience. Live is that last frontier of celebrities and their audience. There's nothing to hide behind there whatsoever. Your personality is there for everyone to see. There's no edits to hide behind. So as you say, that really was a watershed moment for us where Drake came to the platform. And suddenly it woke up a lot of celebrities thinking, okay, how can I harness this? This looks like a great way to speak to my audience.
Obviously, one of the most recent ones, which I'm sure everyone's seen, is that Offset is now an ambassador with FaZe. So why do you think someone like him is coming into this industry and also working with FaZe?
I mean, I think Offset gets, like, so Offset's not the first rapper that fan of FaZe Clan's worked with over the years, but I think he kind of understood that, like, the trajectory of where this is going, gaming and everything. And I think he viewed it as a great way to, like, combine his passion, which is he's a hardcore Call of Duty player, with something he can actually connect with. And, like, he honestly feels super culturally connected to our guys. He was on TMZ the other day, and pardon the language, but he basically was just yelling, "FaZe the fuck up, bitch," and just like truly just like embraced this whole thing, and it's beautiful. He got on Instagram stories like a week and a half ago, and he was repping our PUBG team, which I don't know how much everybody knows about PUBG. It doesn't have the highest viewership at the moment, so to have someone like Offset putting on his Instagram stories like our squad going and doing like team wipe, it's pretty incredible. You know, but I think he's in line with a lot of other people that have come before. You know, Lil Yachty came around last fall. We were doing some stuff with him. Before that, there's an artist named Ugly God that we've done some stuff with. And if you go back to 2012, I want to say, early Logic video, there's a FaZe hoodie in that song that he did that was like a Justice cover, basically. And he got it really early on. And so the first television performance that he did, FaZe Banks was sitting pretty much front row, and he got a call out directly from Logic. So, like, you know, our guys have been believing that this space is bigger than the rest of the world has for a very long time. And some of the early rappers and early artists kind of got that very quickly. And now I think everybody else is really waking up a lot more to it. You see T-Pain, I think, was on the Call of Duty stream. A lot of the NBA players, they've been playing for a long time. I mean, you go back 3-4 years ago, Dwight Howard and those guys were at the Call of Duty kind of event. A few of the basketball players show up for the League of Legends stuff. Gordon Hayward, I think, plays League of Legends as well. So I mean, I think Offset is just probably one of the biggest names so far that's done it, besides like Drake, in terms of understanding it. And I just, for us, it's better that he's really embracing it, and he's getting kind of the culture component of it. And so I think it's pretty awesome. So yeah.
I think one of the other things that's also come into it is very much streetwear, and we all know that Fnatic and FaZe both have a collaboration with Champion. Craig, if you want to go in a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, Fnatic as an organisation, we're not just an esports team or a rights holder, we're also a lifestyle brand. So typically the Fnatic fan at the moment is a male in his young 20s and will buy a jersey off us once or twice a year maybe. But in the future, what we're trying to transition to is that we have an 8-year-old who for Christmas sees a really cool, I don't know, pajamas or hoodie or whatever it is. And while they're doing their Christmas list to Santa Claus, they write that they want the Fnatic X, Champion hoodie or whatever it is. And then they get introduced to our brand early doors from a lifestyle perspective. And then we can capture that fan really early and take them through the Fnatic journey and introduce them to esports or influencers and personalities as a result. So the Champion deal came off the back of a collaboration from last year at Worlds. So we did a limited edition hoodie, sold out in 10 minutes, I think it was. And we actually, off the success of that, we actually reintroduced it in a really cool way on Twitch, actually. So we did a product drop on Twitch where you filled in a branded survey. It was kind of like a game. And then you had the chance to buy or the opportunity to win the hoodie. So it's a great example, and we replicated that at TI as well, where we worked with the likes of Ben Hoffer, who put together a really cool design for us, and yeah, we've monetized off the back of that. So it's a huge part of everything that we do.
Just throwing this to the rest of the panel, why do we think that not just artists, but brands and streetwear are keen and desperate and open to get into something like gaming and esports?
Okay.
Well, I think from a I think from an artist perspective, it's keeping them relevant with their audience. So the world's changed, right? So media consumption has changed, sports entertainment has changed, and gaming or esports has arisen from that as a result, or rather been catapulted into mainstream culture. So I think from an artist perspective, it's probably more to stay relevant with their fans. I mean, you're much more qualified to say that than me, but from a brand perspective, it's a way of, for some brands, it's a way of reinventing themselves, I think. With other brands, it's a way of kind of bolting on into a pop culture, much like how Vans did it with skateboarding maybe in the 90s, for example. So I really think it's a different approach in terms of how, from an artist and a brand's perspective.
Yeah. First of all, I'm stoked you still think Santa Claus is relevant. I agree. I think, and I've always seen, as I've gotten into it, I've always seen a bigger parallel to surf and skate, as you mentioned, than say traditional sports. And I think teams like Fnatic and FaZe Clan are capturing those kids. I don't know if they're disenfranchised, like maybe they were back when surf and skate was sort of a bigger thing. But they're definitely looking for a different route, a different culture, their own culture, and it's the stars have aligned with esports. And then when you add in the fact that it's a sport that also emphasizes participation by a huge number of fans, as opposed to a traditional sport. I mean, that just sort of amplifies the authenticity and the engagement that you'll get. So I mean, it makes total sense what these guys are doing.
Yeah, I think brands are starting to listen as well. So they know exactly what their fans are looking for. They're now creating apparel lines that are for a specific set of esports fans, and then you're seeing the likes of Primark getting involved with it as well, and suddenly they're involved, and that changes the game entirely. But it's listening to them, it's making sure that, we talk to brands a lot of the time about how you operate authentically in a space with credibility. The minute you just start badging things, that doesn't work. You need to have a deep understanding of it. And I think that's where brands have got to. And I think it's also just a virtue of the bigger brands are starting to activate, and that's just starting a domino effect as well, where suddenly everyone realizes this is a space we have to be in. We're not reaching these guys anywhere else. They're not on linear TV. This is how we do it. So I think that's had a big impact as well on the speed of this uptake.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like the simplest kind of like, I guess, buzzword or so is, I mean, we're youth culture, like through and through, and everybody always chases youth culture. Historically, like to the skating kind of thing, that was the cool kids back in the day. They still are, but like, gaming is like, we were talking about this before, back in the day when music was like the rebellious cool thing to kind of do. Yeah, everybody wanted to go out and buy a guitar or buy a DJ deck or something like that. Now it's, you want to get the streaming rig, or you want to get the keyboards that the pros have. You want to get the things that'll make you the best gamer, because that's what all the cool kids are doing. Some of these guys are making $3 million at tournaments. Some of these guys are making, a paltry hundreds of thousands of dollars at tournament, which, by the way, is ridiculous that that's a small amount of money in the space now. And I think that the youth culture component is like, I mean, it's such a huge driver of what everybody else is kind of overall chasing, that we have everything here, and that's what everybody wants. Specifically for FaZe Clan, like we combine, I think, 200 million followers across all of our socials from all of our content creators and our core channels, and we do somewhere like close to 500 million views a month. That's heavier than a lot of publishing, like newspaper distribution and things like that out there. I mean, that's moving a market, and we're just, we're not alone in that. There's several other gamers and people that are out there, and organizations that also have heavy streamers that drive a lot of engagement. I imagine even skateboarding and everything would have been substantially bigger, had they had that level of direct relationship with their fan base, which at this point right now is the biggest part from the pop culture thing. Is historically you had to have newspapers or MTV or something tell you what pop culture was. No, the fans directly themselves, via platforms like Twitch, can tell directly the kids directly, like, this is what pop culture is, and the kids can decide, and the numbers reflect it. So I think that's the biggest kind of change there.
Yeah, with something like Twitch as well, it's a two-way conversation. It's not purely them being told. Is that?
Go for it.
I'll leave that for now.
Sorry, there's a question that just popped up in here, and I'm curious about it.
But it's that two-way conversation now. On Twitch, it's that ability to actually interact with the person creating the content. So it's not just about saying, this is the new trend. It's like, actually, let's figure out this trend together as a community.
I think it's really interesting that Erik touched on content creators, because content creators is no longer synonymous with gamers. On Twitch, you have people who create content who aren't gaming, and you have people who are playing games who aren't traditionally gamers. So, we have the likes of Neymar, I think he missed the Ballon d'Or because he was doing a Call of Duty stream, which was just insane. And you have Formula One drivers like Lando Norris, who streams every day. And kind of building onto that, you also have a really big music scene on Twitch now. Brendan Urie, who's the lead singer of Panic at the Disco, also pretty much streams on a daily basis. And I know Patrick would, probably be more adverse into diving into a bit more why that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, with Brandon, he's a client on the music side, so that's the context. But a lot of it seems to me, and you would know, but it seems to me that a lot of these guys are doing it just for the pure, I guess, joy of it, right? I mean, there's not necessarily a profit motive in them streaming. They're just doing it because they love it. They understand, as you touched on a few minutes ago, that their fans want that engagement. They want it sort of pure. They want it uncensored. They sort of want it, not prepackaged and very authentic. And for the most part, sort of the barriers of entry are gone. And that's the reason I think skating never got to the point where, say, esports can get, because those tools didn't exist to push it to push it to that level. But all those barriers of entry are gone, and this is the way that fans want to consume or engage with the things they're into. And I have one sitting at home right now. He's 14 years old, and that's how he does it. He will literally play, have YouTube up, and Twitch up at the same time, and just consume.
And I think one word as well that's really important is community. So, we've all kind of alluded to it, the fact that you can have that direct contact with the audience directly, but esports and gaming in general is so community driven that it's easy to get that live feedback and therefore react to it, but also be more proactive in the future about, what type of collaborations can we do, where's the opportunities, and how do brands fit into that. We did something with Deezer not that long ago where
Oh
yeah, more questions.
Yeah. Terrible questions. So awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty toxic. We did something with Deezer not that long ago because music is such a big part of the universe, and it was basically how can we capture that emotion through music and transcend it into a partnership that gives value back to the community. So, it's just that really important buzzword, but it is so damn important.
Kind of more than just these mainstream celebrities getting into esports. Also, esports is also getting into music. I mean, we had KDA, who were basically a fictitious K-pop band that Riot had brought out to promote essentially skins, but their song, I mean, I'm a really, really big fan of KDA, given the fact they have one song and they're just not a real band. If you guys haven't heard Popstar, I would really recommend going home and listening to it. But where do we see that branch going? Not just a collaboration, but things that's being invented and created in the esports space?
I mean, the first thing that we noticed when we started Nations is that the kids that we were selling music merch to and the kids that were selling esports merch to, there's a big there's a lot of commonality. So I just think it's just sort of a natural extension. I mean, sports and music have always been intertwined to some degree, halftime shows and things like that. And I just think that it finds its own voice in how it's going to be presented in esports, whether it's going to be like the marshmallow thing, or we went to the Berlin Major and there was some guy shredding on a guitar between matches. I mean, it'll find its voice as to how it's going to be worked into the program, but it definitely will. But it's just a matter of time.
So we've got a gamer who is we have a Fortnite pro who was a male model prior to being a pro, and he was also a hardcore Dota 2 player. Part of the reason I signed him was I was concerned that he wasn't that serious of a gamer, but when he said he was that hardcore about Dota, I was like, okay. And I highlight that because he's got really interesting mix of talents that are very unique to gamers, where he stands alone. Occasionally he'll go and sing a song on stream, basically. And I think we're still in this kind of early stage of finding these almost transcendental talents that hit all of these things. They may be an amazing gamer and an ability to sing and pretty much a future pop star. Ninja is effectively a pop star. Just call it like it is. He's a gamer, but really he's transcended it all. He's in the cover of magazines. He's a pop star. And I think, I'll go back to the music industry for a second, and you go back to the 40s, 50s of what was pop culture music-wise. You start moving forward, and bands had to be a little more active on stage. You start getting to the 60s, 70s. It's even more active than that. Eventually, you get a Michael Jackson, right? And he just becomes bigger than what your expectations are of the type of show you see, or the Elton John that's just bigger than what you're expecting someone that's playing the piano. And I think that we're still early on in the streaming stage right now, where you're going to get some really incredible talents that come out, whether they're pros in games or they're just casual content creators. And even like a Disrespect, for example, Dr. Disrespect, right? I don't think these kids all fully realize that there are television stations and they're the sole producers and talent, and they're setting their own programming blocks. But eventually it's going to start iterating out a little bit, and you're going to have really impressive productions with potentially people self-releasing on labels, like music, whatever they want to put out. They're content creators, as you were saying. So I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of that in the next few years. And I don't know if they're going to come out of the pro side or if they're going to come out of just the pure casual side, but I think they're just going to get more and more talented, personally.
Yeah, and it's this democratization of media, I suppose, that you don't need to go through the normal channels anymore. You can, as you say, effectively start your own TV station on Twitch or wherever you want to do it, start putting your content out there, and if it's good enough, if it's hitting at the right moment, if you get a big enough following, you will naturally rise to the top. And then suddenly all that shiny stuff kind of comes afterwards on that. That's when you're going to get your production later on the end. But yeah, I think you're exactly right that we're going to see this new generation come through because there is no barrier now to getting your content out there and to reaching an audience.
I think so far a lot of the things we've discussed, like as you guys have said, has been kind of a natural convergence. You have music, you have the celebrities, but one of the trends that we're also seeing is fitness, which isn't always traditionally kind of paired with gaming. Obviously on the FaZe roster, you have Sensor, who is a Call of Duty player, but he's also a Gymshark representative. He's sponsored by Gymshark. How do we see that going? Is that the future? Is fitness going to be the next thing that's going to kind of overtake esports like music and
yeah? So for further context, Sensor is the kid that we had a special jersey made for him that was sleeveless, and he would rock it out there, and he's like a kind of a beefy kid. Look, I think a lot more teams, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think a lot of teams are taking that whole kind of mental conditioning more seriously, physical conditioning more seriously, nutrition. I know a lot of the top teams have dedicated housing, like staff around food and around training, and so like it's a much more common thing to see. The classical concept of a gamer just is kind of a myth in today's like real world of streamer talent and pro gamer talent. There's definitely some kids that still fit some of that mold, but honestly, you look at the Counter-Strike pros, you look at the League of Legends pros, you look at Dota pros, and it's like, these are lean kids. Some of them are clearly like can bench press 300 pounds, like they're in good shape. And I think a few of the opportunistic brands out there, like Gymshark, was built on the backs of a lot of influencers. They got that very early on, and so they found people that kind of fit their mold. I think it's a British-based company too.
Yeah, it is.
And so I think, you're going to definitely get more of that, and you're going to start seeing more of these pros show up on regular big ad campaigns around, like, let's call it sexier campaigns. Eventually the luxury brands are going to start doing stuff featuring them. They'll be like a watch or high fashion brand or something, and they're going to use these guys as models for it because of the recognition, because of the pop culture reference. Like the kids, as they age up, they're going to fully recognize this person. So 100%, it's going to keep on going that direction, no question.
Yeah, and sorry, just from a team perspective, I mean, Erik's exactly right. We have mental coaches, we have nutritionists, we have gym memberships for all our players. We actually have in some contracts where they have to do a number of hours in the gym. They're obviously prized assets of ours. We spend a lot of money on them, and we always want them to be at their absolute peak in terms of performance, but also physically and mentally. So it's actually a really, really big focus for us as an organisation. It has been for a while now. I think we were one of the first teams to introduce things around mental coaching and nutritionists. For example, our League of Legends team in Berlin, they have amazing facilities, but they also have all these extra benefits bolted on top. So fitness is a big thing. I mean, for example, Reckless who's one of our biggest, he's our biggest League of Legends player. He did a post with MyProtein a couple of years back, got ridiculous engagement. That was just an opportunity, much like how Gymshark have done things where they saw an opportunity. He likes fitness, he keeps in relatively good shape, so therefore they activated around that. But you've got likes of Broxo, who's again League of Legends player, he's quite a bulky guy. There's obviously opportunities there for fitness brands to get involved. Fitness is a huge thing worldwide, and we try and promote to all of our players to be active and fit and healthy at any given time, because if you have a healthy body and a healthy mind, then obviously you're going to be performing at your best.
Yeah, you also have, just maybe a step removed from what these guys are talking about, you also have things like running and cycling and rowing. they're moving on to these media platforms to capture the community. So you've got these other activities moving towards what's been created, what esports has built itself on. And in fact, some of them are becoming competitive. So someone had asked, will it replace? I don't think it will replace. I think it's going to live next to like it always has. Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of the things we've spoken about, the examples we've given with Offset and with Champion, these are partnerships with top organizations in the world. Is this going to be a trend, a vital trend in the future? So if you are an esports organization, you want to be successful, do you have to have these kind of activations or bring on these mainstream figures? Or if you don't, will you get left behind?
I think more teams are going to have to kind of get on board, really, in terms of their overall brand strategy and how they approach it. I think for us, it's more about what do our fans want and how can we give them value through the partnerships that we're doing or the collaborations that we're doing. That's always number one for us. And then it's going out and approaching those brands that can help achieve that. So, you know, with us at Fnatic, our mission is to achieve a forge a nation of 1 billion Fanatics, and we can't obviously do that by ourselves. So we need to go out to the industry and get help in order for us to achieve that. But the most important thing for us always is fan first, and what are the fans screaming for? What are they wanting? What type of collaborations are they wanting? And then that kind of fits our approach really in terms of what brands we go for. I mean, you know, we might go for a more niche brand over one of the big wigs one day. I don't know, but it all depends what the fans are driving us towards.
Yeah, no, 100% agreed. I mean, like you mentioned the keyword community earlier. I think if you can fit like a celebrity fits in your community, you can totally plug them in. But if it's like a completely out of left field like play, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
And there's some cautionary tales in the space of not paying attention to your core community, and it's tough. So like, you know, if you like let's say somebody brought in Adele. For all intents and purposes, she's got a big following, makes a lot of sense. If she's not a gamer, there's no cultural fit there. Like it all the numbers stack up, all the like everything lined up, but it makes no sense. It'd almost be better to bring in some rookie NBA player that's really like into League of Legends, for example, who happens to be British. Like that would be a really interesting synergy right there for Fnatic. I mean, he grows, dope. Then he's like going up in the community. You know, a lot of our collaborations and even some of our big celebrities, like a friend of FaZe is a skateboarder named Nigel Houston, and he, you know, he's a good example of a young guy that's grown up watching FaZe Clan related content. A lot of the young rookies in leagues and stuff, you know, FaZe has been around for almost 10 years, which most people don't realize, but it was a group of friends before that were just making trick shotting and sniping clips on YouTube and posting them. And a lot of other people that at the time, you know, like, I'll be honest, you know, Ben Simmons is somebody that does, so he unfortunately wanted to be a part of Optic back when he was growing up, but he still watched the FaZe Clan content, and he hangs with our guys now. And so I think if you're doing what you're doing, you know, like Fnatic's been around for 15, 16 years.
15 years, yeah.
Right, so there's a kid out there who's grown up exclusively like watching Fnatic over this period of time and all the iterations that have happened, and you know, like maybe he's a League of Legends player, and so he's been watching almost 10 years of Fnatic League of Legends. And maybe he is unfortunately gifted with the ability to play football, right? And he can't be a pro gamer because he's just that good. That's happened to some of the people out there. So that's a person to potentially synergize with and fits. But if they're not that, you're just forcing kind of a, you know, square peg into a round hole. And I don't think that's worth it. But there's enough people out there that for sure, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
Just before we get on to questions, let's just all do a very, very quick prediction. We're already seeing things like the parliamentary debate being streamed on Twitch, so I feel like nothing is off the table. Quick prediction from all of you, where you see this conversion sort of going in 5 to 10 years' time. Like, what are we going to see?
I think you're going to see higher production, like we've discussed already. I think you'll see it on the levels of, you know, BT Sports style or Sky Sports style, and the industry will get a lot more professional as a result. And you'll see that kind of investment and that strategy kind of feed into it, and you'll see a lot more high-end stuff that maybe you'd see on a MTV or something. I think that's definitely where it's going.
Patrick?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, but I do think it will keep its voice. I think it will keep its cadence, and it will keep it the way it's programmed, and the way it's presented won't change. And I think, but you know, the quality will get better for sure.
Yeah, I think it's twofold. We need the first esports celebrity in their own right. Like, you know, we've mentioned someone like Ninja, but as you say, he's a pop star. We need that household name that everyone knows and everyone associates and is in that zeitgeist. On the other side of things, I think you're going to see that very definite tipping point of the value exchange. At the moment, we're looking at, you know, music artists coming to our esports events because, you know, what can they bring to us? But actually, it's very, very soon going to be, okay, what are we bringing to them? And I think you're going to see the value exchange swing back the other way very, very rapidly at some point.
Yeah.
Good question.
Question.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions which I think we can answer, and a couple you guys are bad people. So we'll do the non-toxic one.
I'll answer the second one. We both sell a lot of merch.
Yeah, we do.
Question is, who sells more between Fnatic and FaZe as a revenue thing? Like, trust me, we both sell a lot of merch.
I think there's a question for Erik and Craig on how can we start to have the merch by teams to be readily available for purchase at events.
I mean, yeah,
that's just a logistics thing. Like,
it is.
Look, there's a lot of moving parts for the events. It's a mixture of tournament organizers wanting to carry it, whether or not we as organizations decide that we want to set up pop-ups or anything around, which comes with its own weight for cost and, you know, a cost-benefit thing. You know, I know you've done a bunch of pop-ups. For anybody that's aware, they're in the super trendy Shoreditch area. That's where their offices are. You know, we did a pop-up in New York that we kind of weighed, and it got an insane amount of engagement, and we had like a whole block closed, and cops were there, and we had to shut it down early, and that was dope on a certain component, but it also was hard to get kids through on a regular basis because there's a certain amount of time when they come through, so you can only sell a certain amount of product. I think it's just over time, logistics are going to get better and better. It's already better now than it was even last year, than it was the year before. So it's early music industry stuff too. Everything was queued up by a certain point, but early on it was probably utter trash.
I mean, one of the things that we're trying to do is again, sort of be Merch Switzerland. So we have, you know, the number of events that we've covered and run stores for this year over last year is probably increased threefold. I mean, there's still hundreds of tournaments that we're not doing, but you know, slowly but surely we're picking off tournaments that we can go in and create a sort of selling experience like you'd see at a concert or any other sporting event, and you know, working with as many teams as we can to sort of centralize sales and you sort of find a standard for selling at events. You know, we'll keep plugging away at that. I think eventually it'll all sort of come out and equalize, and everything will be cool.
I think just real quickly on the events bit, I mean, Erik's hit nail on the head in terms of logistics, distribution, supply chain and everything else, but also we have a fully fledged events team, and they have to assess every single event. We actually do more events than any other esports team, to my knowledge anyway. So, but you have to tie in so many different factors. You know, for example, in Athens the other week, you know, the individual might not have as much capital to spend than someone in the States. So therefore, you have to go for a complete different strategy on how you bring that retail space to that particular event. So we haven't 100% cracked it, but we are a lot better today than we were yesterday, and we'll be a hell of a lot better tomorrow. So, yeah.
Perfect. I think that's just about time, how much we have time for. I'm sure these guys will be around if you have any questions for them individually. But otherwise, thanks so much, everyone.